Hey, what's up guys? Dominator1992 here, Retribution Gaming, and the patch is out guys, the patch is out, and that only means one thing, patch notes. Let's dive into them. But just before we do, please make sure you smash that like button, please make sure you subscribe to Retribution Gaming so we can keep you guys up to date on everything Wayfinder and to also help us grow the channel. Thanks very much for your support and thanks very much for watching. Okay, so the patch has just come out and it's bloody huge, okay? I'm not going to be able to read out every single change in this patch, but I will leave a link for it in the description below so you can check it out yourself. This is a huge patch, guys, okay? And if I was to list every single change on here, we would be here hours, and unfortunately, I think that'd be quite boring if I'd done it in one session. But I will highlight some of the interesting stuff on here, and the rest of it you can check out in the description below. To start off with, we have Eventide. It's the season of Eventide, a festive winter holiday full of gifts. With this, you'll gain new quests and challenges, there'll be new rewards, a new event, Plunderful, a new expedition, Eventide Vale, a new hunt, the Winter Queen, and there'll be even more new stuff with that as well, so make sure you check that out in game. Next up, we have the Awakening system. Now this is one of the things that got spoiled in one of the spoilers. We knew it was coming and it's now in game. So with the Awakening system, you'll basically get to increase your character stats, increased echo capacity, and you'll also gain an affinity point as well every time your weapon or Wayfinder is also awakened. You'll also be able, on a fully awakened Wayfinder, to equip level 33 accessories as well. Fantastic, because some of the newer accessories that have come out in more recent boss fights start off at like 31, 33, so now you'll actually be able to equip them. Okay, moving on, we now have the Senja revamp, and this is another thing we knew was coming. So let's start with the Showboat passive. Reduced damage window now starts from the beginning of Showboating abilities. Pummel and gain favor persists through the end if the ability is fully charged. When hit while Showboating, gain extra crowd favor meter and gain a stacking hill over time effect. Showboating now reduces incoming impact by 25%. We then have Pummel. Ability power scaling significantly increased, increasing with charge duration. 10% immediate tap use, 15% partially charged, and 25% fully charged. Moving on to gain favor. The player can now move while using gain favor at reduced movement speed. Taunt and buff range is now increased. Grand Finale ult has now been removed and it has been replaced with Thunderous Glory, which is the new ultimate. Thunderous Glory deals damage to nearby enemies and buffs nearby allies with increased weapon and ability power for 20 seconds. While Thunderous Glory is active, Senja's weapon attacks cause chain lightning, dealing hybrid weapon and AP damage to her target and up to 5 changed enemies. Okay, next up we have new weapons. 5 new weapons total. The first one being Sword and Shield Bastion with its ability Healing Pulse. The new Scythe Bloodsong with its ability Will of Pain. The new Greatsword Wind Mother's Fang with its ability Transcendence. The new Dual Strikers Umbros with its ability Thousand Cuts. And the new rifle Voidbinder with its ability Abyssal Anchor. Next up we have weapon balance changes. All weapon abilities now scale half with ability power and half with weapon power, so keep that in mind. Going forward with this list, I'm only going to highlight some of the changes. This is where you need to open up the document yourself and take a look at these to really get the in-depth changes of what they've done with the weapons. But to start off with, we know that Scythe's animation speed is increased by 15%, and that covers the light attack combo, the heavy attack combo, and the crossover combo. Sword and shields also saw their animation speed 10% faster. Shield attacks now deal 10% more damage and break as well. Fantastic. With marksman, we got the active reload. The gum jam effect no longer occurs when failing the active reload minigame. Instead, the reload sequence will play out naturally, filling the clip at the end of the timer. Each marksman subclass now has a unique perfect reload buff. Starting with rifles, they will gain 35% fire rate for 4 seconds. With shotguns, it's 50% break power for 4 seconds. For burst rifles, it'll be 50% crit power for 5 seconds. And for rune cannons, it will be 50% weapon power for 5 seconds. The duration of each perfect reload buff now scales accordingly to the number of shots fired from the previous clip. An example of this, if only half the clip is expended before reloading, the perfect reload buff's duration will have been reduced by 50%. Okay, next up we have Wayfinder Changes. Starting off with this, we have Shadow Step. The total ratio is 2.5 AP and that's going up to 3.5 AP. Umbral Aura, total ratio from 6 AP to 9 AP. Vengeful Shade, initial ratio was 1.5 AP and that's going up to 2 AP. And we have the slam ratio from 2.5 AP to 3 AP. Next up we have Wingrave. Righteous Strike from 1.5 AP to 2.5 AP. Radiant Pulse. Heavy Strike 1.2 AP to 1.7 AP. Light Pulse 0.55 AP to 0.8 AP. Moving on to Silo, we have Firebomb initial damage 0.5 AP to 1 AP. Oil Bomb Explosion initial damage from 1 AP to 1.5 AP. Next up we have Physical Defense and Magic Resistant damage reduction curves being increased. Damage reduction when defense stats are equal to the enemy attack increased by 15% to now 18%. Maximum damage reduction when defense stat is 4 times the enemy attack stat increased by 40% to 55%. To note, in a future update, they do plan to change how this stat is calculated to normalize the damage reduction values across enemy classes. They also fixed an issue where the following skills had no impact: Kairos' Rake, and Venomous' Transfusion, Vampiric Blast, and Deep Breath. And to top that off, they also updated some Wayfinder visuals, Silo's Ultimate, his Firebomb and Oil Bomb, Nis, updated shade transitions, the Ultimate got polished more, added signature daggers during shadow steps, and reduced the opacity of Umbral Aura buff, and Venomous updated non-combat double jump and new transfusion projectiles. Next up we have enemy updates, and to keep this brief, here's what came with that: AI system improvements, AI damage, and enemy adjustments as well. Okay, next up we have world updates. Okay, so they have gone back and changed some stuff to some of the zones, such as Aurelian, the Deep, the Reaver Woods, and the Highlands. There's a bunch of changes for each one of these. Make sure you check out the patch notes, there's some really nice stuff here. Some examples from this be like Kola the Beastmaster, where all summoned beasts will have slightly increased health and resilience now. And they've added some invulnerability when Kola summons beasts as well, stuff like that. Other bosses like Wormwood, they've added a small heal to Wormwood when the seed hatches on the hollowed ground. Reaver King, for example, had improved mounting behavior, tuned melee attacks to be hit more aggressive and engaging, and improved Marrow's charge attack as well. Next up we have progression and loot updates, and this is kind of a really nice quality of life one. So event resources now drop from more events in each biome. Okay, so for example, the Halcyon Orbs can now be found in large number of events in Aurelian. Other little things as well, just to highlight some out of this patch, was like the Marrow Echo got increased crit power from 10 to 20%, The Reaver King Echo, for example, increased damage from 250% to 350%, and its cooldown got reduced from 30 seconds to 15 seconds as well. Other little things like that, again, check out the patch notes, there's a really nice list to go through on that. Other notes on this as well, just briefly going into it, is the boss loot also got reworked to improve the item mix and increase the drop rate for epic accessories. Vestige and essence drops rates now scale with difficulty sphere, which is fantastic, so running sphere 4 is now actually in your best interest if you want to gain these items on a higher drop rate. Other things as well, like Trickster guaranteeing a Trickster coin now, which is fantastic, making Trickster farming that much easier. And on top of that as well, getting the Archaic Bones is much easier now because they're from events, so you can get your hands on multiples of those. I was doing a run earlier with Bing, and we ended up getting 5 in the run as well, just off a single run. It was fantastic. Next up, we have Mutator Updates. Now, we'll go into some details of this more. So, mutators will now no longer target players at the player's start location or checkpoint respawns. Players in these areas are no longer targeted things like bombs. Damage effects will still damage players, but ground effects will not damage players in these areas. Trickster knockbacks won't affect players in these regions either. Hunt resets. Mutators will now clean up after the hunt / expedition ends. Mutator objects will despawn. Periodic events will stop. Gloom Shroud. Gloom Shroud holdout duration decreased by 1/3. Gloom Collapse recharge rate of Cleanse Station increased by 100%. Gloom Collapse. Radiant Torch should no longer duplicate. Torch no longer floats in the air if dropped while airborne. Torch won't get stuck on elevators. Dodging won't clear Gloom Erosion. Torch will now automatically respawn at the most recent checkpoint if it falls out of play, or on the center tile during the first hunt. Trickster. Fixed fake loot spawns. Updated bombs to match radius of art better. Updated bombs to ragdoll after exploding. Updated to stop spawning bombs after the instance is completed. Bombs no longer have collision. Bombs that have already spawned but have not exploded will deactivate and drop to the ground. They reworked all the bombs, spawned bombs, chest bombs and fake loot bombs to only explode for a single frame. Previously, the damage region would persist for a second. Fire bombs. Gained all updates from Trickster Mutator. Fire pools now have a max limit and will despawn the oldest one when the new one is created. Firebomb's ground / explosion radius now match visuals. Golden Catch. Fixed a lot of interaction issues. This should only be destroyed by explosion from a gloom touched enemy. Greed. Gold piles should replicate correctly now. Gold piles should no longer poof out of existence and should play a quick sink-in animation when gathered. Gold mites no longer spawn from every pile. Gold mites no longer spawn one at a time, but now in swarms. Toxic. Added Mushroom Masher buff. If a mushroom is killed by melee ability, it will grant the killing player a temporary attack power buff. They updated the paddles to not tick immediately upon entering the puddle, giving melee players a window to get in and attack it before being hit, and updated paddles so that players may now jump over them / through them. Next up, we have the much needed UI improvements that came to the game. So with this, we have things like the Echo inventory, XP progression bars have now been added to the player HUD as well, so you can see when you're leveling up stuff. little things like that. There's a whole bunch of changes on this one. It's fantastic, like the new interface and that for some of these as well. Definitely give this one a read. Definitely check it out in game. You're gonna notice it the moment you log in. Next up, we have some more cool stuff, such as XP caches are now being usable. XP from creatures, bosses, and expedition completion bonuses have been reduced by 30%. It's very important. Because of the XP caches now being live, where they weren't before, they've now reduced the XP to keep that in line. Before they were buffed because the caches weren't live, right? So XP was kind of scarce, so they buffed that up to 300%. Now they're just nerfing it by 30%. Weapons are now dyeable, very important to keep that in mind. They've added 2 additional dye slots to Wayfinders as well. Wolf now has some new items available for helper coins. Make sure you check that out, there's a lot of stuff there as well. So make sure, if you haven't already, go and get those helper coins, treat yourself to that shop. They've also improved housing item placement system for smoother decoration. Combat music is no longer tied to enemy front level. It will only start in specific combat scenarios like events, hunts, and anchor fights. Music will no longer stop and start during hunts as well. There's new impact sounds that have been added for all weapon classes, and right now it's really good how they've done that. I'm really loving that change that they've done there. Signal flares are now approachable from both sides. Signal flares now replenish flasks. Flask refill stations have been removed from Highlands and Skylight. Players returning from a hunt or expedition will now spawn much closer to the Gloomgate. Okay, and with that all out of the way, there is still a ton more of this patch. Absolute ton. Such as combat, UI, store, Wayfinder and balance, environment, bugs and myths, creatures, housing, quests. So many fixes in this patch, and honestly this video probably doesn't do it any justice trying to do it all in one nutshell, but there you have it. For those of you that are really interested in all of this, please go check out those patch notes. They are fantastic. They are really long though, so you're going to be reading there for a while, but there is some fantastic stuff in this patch. The devs have really outdone themselves with this. Okay, so my initial thoughts and opinions on the patch. Keeping in mind, I've played this for a few hours now since it's come out. One of the bugs I've encountered is with the new scythe, where it's just invisible. It's not a big deal breaker, but you know, I've been waiting to play with a decent scythe for a while since Epitaph. You know, it's not all that. It's an okay weapon, but yeah, it's not that great compared to this new one. This new one feels fantastic to play with. And one of the actual changes that I actually do not like about this patch is the way the flasks are now. So all your potions, if you want to call it that, where now when you use them, they're just gone, and then you have to recraft more. After coming from having basically a guaranteed set every time you go into an instance to now you have to craft them, because when you use them in another mission and go straight into another, they're gone. Feels kind of rough. Well, you know, I think that was a bad change, to be fair. I feel like that wasn't a good change after coming from how it was to now, but it is what it is, and we'll have to make do with it for now. Maybe the devs can tweak it going forward. We'll see. But that's my only complaint really with this patch. Outside of all that though, I'm going to be very busy over the next couple of weeks, getting all my Wayfinders and weapons awakened, grinding out materials, doing the new event. It's a fantastic time to play, and honestly I knew the patch was going to be big, but I didn't realize it was going to be as detailed in the patch notes as this as well. This is something I don't see, like after playing MMOs for quite some time, I haven't seen something this detailed in quite a while. So this is a really nice breath of fresh air. and it shows the devs really care as well. Like, you can tell just by reading these patch notes, they are very passionate about their game. Other things I've noticed as well with this is like my builds right now, the one with Wingray for example that you've seen me speak clear Reaver King with, kind of feels a little meh, so I'm gonna have to play around the builds, and that's not a bad thing either. I actually really do enjoy playing around with a bunch of Wayfinders with multiple builds and seeing what works and what don't. And also on top of that, I now need to try out these new weapons and see what I can incorporate into the Wayfinder gameplay of mine as well. Absolute fun, absolute fantastic. And then on top of that we have the Awakening. Like that's big hype for me right there. Like, that stuff I love. One thing I will say is with every new patch there's always going to be new bugs, so if you find any new bugs, please head over to the Wayfinder Discord and report them over to the devs as well. What's kind of crazy right now is this video is over 20 minutes long and all we've done is scratch the ice off the surface pretty much. There's so much I haven't covered in this video because this video would be way too long, and the patch notes are just way too long as well to even put in a video format without being here for ages. This patch that just came out is a really big win for Airship. The game really needed this, and boy did they deliver. And I just hope going down the line in future patches this amount of effort is kept up, because this is fantastic. On top of that as well, we also have the Gloom Talk podcast, right? So some of this patch, where we've been very brief in this video, some of that's going to be on the Gloom Talk podcast, going into a little more in depth on some of the stuff on there. And of course we then have more videos coming out where we get to explore this new update more, show off the whole Christmas event and stuff as well, show off some of the new weapons. It's a fantastic time and I hope you guys are excited to see some of the stuff as well. And like always, make sure you smash that like button. Make sure you hit subscribe. So many of you watching aren't subscribed. Subscribed, make sure you turn on notifications so we can keep you up to date with everything Wayfinder. I'm Terminator T92 of Retribution Gaming, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.